This is Lo-Fi Thrasher Lenny Blade, and this is Dungeons and Thrashers. It's a new series of episodes that I will be putting up, and this series will be dedicated to tabletop gaming, board games, role-playing games, card games, miniature games, you know, what have you, anything that you put on the table and play physically and analogically with your friends. No digital stuff here, that's for the Retro Hunter Thailand show. But this is the Dungeons and Thrashers show. So, the first episode of Dungeons and Thrashers, I will be focusing on something that has come up more and more in recent years or months since the rise of our friend COVID-19. So, and that is solo gaming. You know, it's been harder and harder for obvious reasons for us to get together with our friends face to face and have real sessions. So yeah, you could either try to do some sort of solo variant, or you could go online. Online is better than nothing, but it's not, you know, I've done it before, but you can't beat the real thing. That's just the way that it is, at least for me. When I play role-playing games, tabletop games, I want to get away from the screen. So yeah, today I will look at how you can solo roleplay, and to do that I will actually mix two systems together. I will use a board game system to create a randomly generated dungeon, and I will use the cards from that game for the narrative, and to use as the GM to emulate a DM or GM. So for the and then I will use a tabletop role-playing game system to create a character and to resolve the actions and all the good stuff like that. So for the board game part of this, to generate the dungeon, the narrative, the cards, the randomness, if you will, of everything, I have chosen the classic DungeonQuest. And this is a very simple game. It's extremely easy to learn. You just draw the cards and that's what happens. You pick tiles, you put them on. This is not going to be a review of how to play. This is just going to be a video, a two-part video actually. Yeah, I know, but I only have 10 minutes. And I'm trying to speak as fast as I can, but it's still never enough. So on the first, in the first video, this one, I will go through what I will use and what I won't use from this system as sort of the engine, the narrative and the dungeon. And then I have chosen a game called Basic Fantasy. This is basically an OD&D clone, but with ascending armor class and D20 resolutions, apart from thieving skills and things like that. Anyways, it's a very cool system, and by Chris Garnerman and his team, I suppose, but mostly by him, I think. But you could easily use, you know, Dungeons and Dragons or RuneQuest or Warhammer, probably. But I have chosen this because it fits perfectly, and you will see why in a bit. So, but we will concentrate on DungeonQuest, what I will use from this system and what I won't use, and then we will set it up, we will create a character, and we will be all ready to go, and then in the next episode I will go through the dungeon. Sounds cool? Alright.
Alright, so we are down at the table again here, and this is the DungeonQuest board. So this will be where most of the action happens. Now, you can see the space for all the cards as well. So what I will do is, even though we will go into the dungeon, everything outside of the dungeon is available. So there will be, you know, inns, there will be a weapon shop, general store, there will be healers, anything that, you know, a medium-sized fantasy town would have. You could even, once you get some gold, once you gather some gold, you could even hire, you know, hirelings and things like that to help you out. So there's a lot of possibilities here. This is the stuff that we will not use, so obviously I will take out the character cards because we will create our own basic fantasy characters instead. I will not use these tokens, the health tokens, first player token, yeah, and the monster tokens. Don't need those. The combat cards I will definitely not use. That's the worst part of the Dungeon Quest board game, in my opinion, is the combat system. It has this rock, paper, scissors, card-driven system, which is absolutely awful. So I'm happy to get rid of those and not use those cards. And there's also the monster cards, and we won't use the monster cards. Instead, we will roll on the dungeon encounter table from Basic Fantasy. And these rune cards I won't use either, because they don't feel really tabletop RPG-y. So, as I said, I will use the dungeon encounter table instead for this, and I will, in the beginning, I will roll for level 1, and then once I have leveled up, or if, yeah, I will roll on the level 2 for more powerful monsters. So as you level up, you can enter the dungeon again, and you can sort of ramp up the difficulty. There's a lot of versatility, actually, to be honest. So these I will use. These are the tiles that you create the actual randomly generated dungeon with. So you will draw these at random, and then you'll put them out on the grid here on the board. So for example, like this, here we have a corridor, which means that you can immediately move again, and here's another corridor. And then finally you will get to a room, or what's called a chamber, and when you get into a chamber you draw a dungeon card, and then something will happen, whatever happens with the Basic Fantasy rules. So these are search tokens that I will use, obviously, because I will let everyone search once per chamber. So these are used, you know, just to show that you've actually searched there. This is the sun token, and that is basically the time tracker, and when the sun sets down here, the dungeon shuts and you will die inside. This ambush card here is basically just a random encounter, so you roll on the dungeon encounter table from Basic Fantasy and you encounter a monster. This is another thing that can happen: torch goes out. And you will ignore the text here and turn to relight it, or if you're an elf or a dwarf, you don't even have to use that turn, because you can see well enough to relight the torch. That's the Crypt Deck, where you can encounter crypts and you can search the crypts. This is the Corpse Deck, where obviously if you find a dead body, you can search it, and you will have a narrative here, according to the card. And this is the Door Deck, which is exactly what you think it is. When you come to a door, you'll see whether it opens or not. And that's a cool thing if you're playing a thief, which I will, that you will actually have a chance to unlock it. And that's the Search Deck. You can find secret doors, random encounters, traps, unfortunately, and, you know, gold and things like that. This is the Trap Deck. Dangerous deck. And this is the Treasure Deck. Like, once you get to the dragon's chamber, if the dragon is sleeping, you get to draw 2 treasure cards. That's the Dragon Deck. If he wakes up, you'll have to make a save against the breath weapons, or suffer the consequences. So it's extremely dangerous. But I guess that's the name of the game. No, it's not. The name of the game is DungeonQuest and Basic Fantasy. See you